Hey everyone, it is your favorite CEO, Miss Flo, and welcome to another episode of Neon Mike, where the conversation just glows. My guest today, I've been fortunate enough to, connect through social media and read Pepper Piper, Monster Hunter, their creation, their baby, Vashmir Valentine. Welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on today. I really appreciate it. Thank you for sending me these because I've enjoyed reading them. Um, for those that are not familiar with the comic book, if you are like a Buffy fan or Brothers Grimm, this is the comic book for you. And we have representation. So, how does it feel to actually, have your work published and people like enjoy your work?
Good. Especially the fact that this was created, for a specific type of people within our community that we feel like really don't have a voice yet and have been really just slowly building up um, their own base, and we just feel like that we really tapped into it, and to see them actually read the comic and enjoy the comic is really what's heartfelt for me as a writer, and I'm sure for the team too.
For sure. And like as soon as I read the premise, the concept is like we're taking the old fables, like the old fairy tales, and it's like, what if they had powers? Not only do they have powers, or they use like their fable as power, they're hunting witches. And it's like it's always challenging to take a story from, I don't know, that's been around for like hundreds of years now, that's been retold, remixed, so God knows how many times. Like,
Mm.
how are you able to kind of make these tales fresh for a new generation?
Well, it's kind of like we kind of follow by the Stan Lee method, which is one when it comes to writing it, when it comes to coming up with kind of these comic book characters, you tend to lean more towards their story of who they are first, and who they are as a person before developing a superpower. So in my studies of some of the things that Stan Lee has done, like even when it comes to Spider-Man, the story behind him first was he wanted to write a really good story about a teenager, and as a teenager's life, dealing with the struggles of his uncle father figure dying, and just kind of going through the mundane experiences of a teenager's life, and then having these superpowers thrown on top of it. So a lot of the characters in this story who have fables, that's where I'm really concentrating more, focused on their story, and then their story and their backstory, how that relates to now having this ability, and also what negative sides to having an ability like that has an effect on people's lives. Because one thing that gets constantly, how can I put this? One thing that I at least constantly put within each of the characters in this story is that these aren't actually powers. They're really more like curses.
Mm.
So they're curses that these people are actually, that curses that have been passed down from generation to generation, and the characters are just dealing with them. They're using them for the source of good, but you'll realize further on in the story that not all of these these fables are actually all in a positive light. Some of them are in a negative light. But that's something that you learn further down in the story. But for me, having them involved with characters that aren't of a Caucasian background, to me means a lot, because too many times in the past we've been tricked to believe that these can only be related with this type of person, and that's not true at all. Because we know with lineages and the way that the world truly works, different people fall in love, and sometimes when those people fall in love, they can be from different ethnic backgrounds, and they can produce children that break up that ethnic group. So we want to showcase that too.
Yeah, and that's what like what I really do like about the comic book is just like they're fables, so they don't necessarily have to be one specific ethnicity. they could be like whichever, and you had fun, and you can tell that you have fun, kind of like casting those roles. Like if
Mm,
we take our main lead, Pepper Piper, who is a non-binary, biracial, you know, hero here. But what I really, if you just like pay attention to, like you said, it was more focused on the character that you wanted to build, their backstory. You know what I mean? Anybody can relate or understand, losing a parent. And
hmm
not only like losing a parent, but how they lost them and how that kind of builds the person's character and motivation. So, like in the story, Pepper Piper, I hope I'm not spoiling too much. Okay.
You're good. You're good. Trust me.
Pepper Piper lost their mother was like a witch hunter too, and was killed by a witch, and excuse me, that kind of set them on this path of revenge.
Mm,
Like they're going through the training, they went to the witch hunter organization, the school, did all of that, and their sole motivation is like just to like kill all witches. Like all witches are bad, point blank, period. Um, they end up, getting kicked out of the school. Like they just become like a bounty hunter, freelancer, and just like even doing it for money. Um, and then like that in itself, like that could apply to anybody, no matter their, how they identify, their ethnicity, or their sexuality. The motivation itself, keeps you intrigued. You know what
mm,
I mean? Because you want to see, like, okay, are they going to get their, revenge? Are they ever going to capture or, kill the witch that killed their mother? You know what I mean? That's like, keeps you wanting to like read more and more and more. And then you actually see uh, Pepper's journey as they develop as a hunter. And that in itself, I think, is just good writing, you know? So, well, a couple of things is like, well, one, how did you start off as like an author and, in comic books?
mm. So, my journey actually began at a young age. I think the first book that I ever wrote was titled "The Dream Stowaway," and I wrote that when I was about 7 or 6 years old. And I was so young that obviously, I wasn't that well at spelling. So my mom had to actually, I had to dictate the entire, story and idea to her, and she wrote it down. And I still have that, that copy that she wrote somewhere in my closet, just as like a memory um, token of that first story that was created. But for me, I had been creating stories for a really long time, but unfortunately, there wasn't an outlet for me to be able to do it. So most of my life was just kind of comprised of coming up with these different fairy tales because I was always a huge fan of fairy tales, but I just had nothing to do with them because they just people weren't really interested in it. Especially when I started becoming a filmmaker, I started realizing that the African American community, at least in the film community, wasn't really interested in creating fantasy for African Americans. So even aside from being a writer, even in the film world where I worked as a director and a screenwriter, I was still receiving backlash, pretty much from all sides, saying that like
Mm.
this isn't going to work. Black people don't watch fantasy; they're not into fantasy. Um, so I just kept collecting, kept collecting and kept collecting over time, and after I had realized that I had started to really have a good hand on this fantasy thing and being able to create really good fantasy, um, I decided to take it to the next level. And that would be I had a short film that had came out, and it was based on one of the fantasy characters I created, which was called the Wish and the Wisp. And it was pretty much about this creature, this cat-like creature that would go around to kids' homes, and if a kid found a wish, it would try to trick the kid out of the wish so that it could keep it for itself. So,
Oh.
yeah, it's very clever. It's written in the style of like the Dr. Seuss's The Cat in the Hat. So there's a lot of rhythmic rhyming to it. There's actually a part in the story where the grandmother, when she's telling the other kids, her story, because one of the kids actually finds a wish, she actually says to them, and it's been a while since I've done this, so you gotta go easy on me. It's I once had a wish that I always wished that never came true until I met Wisp. A wisp, yes, wisp, a wisp of the wisp that comes out at night to steal your wish. But this wisp I tricked into granting my wish, for wisp can be tricky when granting a wish. So that's pretty much the whole entire story. Is like this thing is just like trying to trick this little girl out of her wish, which is a really actual wish. It's a real wish. So whether she like wished on a shooting star or she found a small wish or a four-leaf clover, she has one, and this wisp is really trying to get it from her because they collect wishes. Uh, and the story goes on to how she tricks the wisp into granting the wish that she really wants before he has a chance to take it from her before midnight. But there was just little characters like that and these full stories that I had in these boxes that I was collecting years after years. So this story actually not only gives me the opportunity to take fables, as we call them, and transfer them around into what I want them to be, but it also gives me a chance to introduce African American fables that we have never heard of before, that I had created over the years. So now I can kind of, add to that tradition of fairy tale or storytelling that, I've always loved since I've been a kid.
Wow. Well, look, first of all, who are these people that saying black people don't like fantasy? Because
Listen,
that's like that was all that, like on my dad's TV, it stayed
mhm,
on sci-fi. You know what I mean? I have friends who fell in love with Harry Potter from the book to all the movies and the sequels. So like this whole thing, like black people don't really like sci-fi lies.
yeah,
Like that's such a bizarre claim.
it is, and it's you have to understand too. This isn't coming from the newer generation, right? This isn't coming from the current generation. This is coming from the older generation who grew up in a time period where films like Juice and films like that, and where African American films were only considered films that had to do with you know um, the street life or things of that nature, right? Things that were gang related, things like were more family orientated, or things that had to do with like family gatherings, right? So you can see times are changing now, especially with the whole blurred community and stuff. They're not used to this, and they're really having a hard time, making this change into trying to please the younger audience, and they really are having a hard time doing it because for years they had always made fun of the blurred community. For years they had always ignored the blurred community, which is good for me, right? Because now I get a chance to shine and say, this is what I was telling you guys people, really wanted and people really were looking for. But at that time, a lot of blurs were closeted,
Mm.
so they weren't able to speak their mind. They weren't able to go to these conventions as loudly as they can now. So slowly they're trying to understand it, but they aren't ready to accept it, and that's why you're not seeing as much as you should see of black content that's either fantasy related and stuff like that. Now you may get one or two pieces every now and then, which is like God, the name of the one that was on HBO not too long ago.
You're talking about like Lovecraft? Was it Lovecraft?
Exactly. Yeah. You'll get something every now and then because that's them testing the waters. But for the most part, and of course, those aren't necessarily African American filmmakers in terms of like the producers and stuff and the executives that are producing that stuff. They still are Caucasian. But in terms of our people that are up top, they are definitely scared of taking a chance of something like that because they think it's going to do horrible. I'm just being straight up honest with you because again, if it wasn't for that, you would see more of it.
Yeah, because I remember I saw like a post recently. It was about years ago. This was when Martin Lawrence was like just starting out. He was like really, really young. There was like a family of black wizards and witches. And I think I'm not sure they did like a full season or whatever, but I'm like, I was looking at it and I'm just like, this would go so hard today. You know what I mean?
They were
And
they were up
it's
for that back then, but now it's like I said, it was we had little moments. We had like Meteor Man. We had stuff they were trying, but those were certain filmmakers that love fantasy, like Robert Townsend and stuff like that. But they're far and few in between since then um, that still do it. You know what I mean? Or still want to push it as hard as somebody like the Blur community would want to see it.
well, yeah, well, it's a shame because like there's so many ideas that probably would have flourished, but you're right. We are fortunate enough to where Hollywood isn't the gatekeeper that it used to be.
Hmm.
We are seeing more creatives take advantage of social media and YouTube, where they, if they have the skills, if they have the creativity, then they could just make it happen and just watch their following grow on its own. And just like to be honest, like just to prove those people wrong,
Hmm.
because it's like we deserve to be in fantasy. We don't age. Perfect for vampires. Perfect for like fairies. Like it's very believable. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? And so, well, we're fortunate enough to have people like you who are able to find a way to bring fantasy that includes us to the forefront. It has been an easy journey, but you definitely just put it out there. So I'm curious, is like what draws you to fairy tales specifically? Like what do you like about fairy tales?
It was always like escapism for me, for the most part. But I think it was also the fact that it was specific to someone. So, having a fairy tale like rather be Peter Pan, who was, it's solely specific to Peter Pan, or Rumpelstiltskin, who it's only, specific to that person that had to deal with that. I think again, there's like kind of like a mystery with it, and I've always wondered how cool it would be if there was a mystery like that involved, um, with people of color, and how they would have dealt with being in that situation among all the other things that we have dealt with over the years. Um, because a lot of times people don't like to think that we dwell in witchcraft and stuff like that, and that's not true at all. Um, but we have been cursed. So I think that relates a little bit more so to us than it does other races. So we finally get a chance to see what it's like to, to have characters of color, in these kind of fanatic ideas and situations, and see how they dealt with it. Um, like we have a character Idris who, is a descendant of the Sleepy Hollow story, and that story, when I read it from the first time, I was like, this doesn't even sound like this would happen to somebody Caucasian. It sounds like this would happen to somebody black. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. I didn't think that was written for that, and that's why I changed it and said, nope, this story I feel like it would relate better to an African American. Um, so being able to do that and have that ability to do it, so I can see how somebody would deal with that if that curse was on their family. For me, is one of the reasons why I love fantasy so much, because they're amazing stories, right? Like, they're ones that have surpassed the, so many different years and so many different generations. You think about how many people know about Pinocchio, how many people know about Snow White, how many, like, these stories have been around for years, and we haven't forgotten them yet. So, um, for me to be able to be a writer that could create a story like that, and have it, be remembered years and years and years, while I'm gone, it's one of the reasons why I love it so much.
Yeah, and that shows like the measure of impact. Because
Mhm.
like if you like I said, like I grew up in the age of like Buffy, Angel, Supernatural, Grimm, and all of those like really really stuck with me because there was a mystery element to the episodes. There was this like the strength of seeing strong women characters fight the bad guys and be the hero, and that meant a lot. But even means more when it's like also did Power Rangers, like what I mean, when you
Yeah.
saw you know Ashley, the first image of a black woman superhero in the yellow suit, it still, what I mean, it still sticks with you as an adult. And that's the value of impact that some people still, have a lack of understanding.
Mm,
They don't have that lens to see like what it means for us, to see us on, on the screen.
mm.
So, but what another thing that I'm very curious about is like because Next Step Comics have been very instrumental in this rollout. How did you manage to connect with them?
So that was actually a group of women who were interested in, creating more, sci-fi and fantasy that was African American based, or again had to deal with people of color, because they were just really tired of seeing what was out there, and they didn't feel like it was. it was reaching a big enough platform. And at the same time, where they were, coming up with this company, uh, I was working on Pepper Piper and trying to get that out because it was something that I felt like I wanted to write. It was a story that was based on my nieces who are biracial and their experiences, and I was really trying to get the project off the ground and really wasn't having too much luck doing it. I had a GoFundMe, I think it was a GoFundMe. Yeah, I think it was like a GoFundMe page that was kind of that I did maybe years ago, and I was really trying to push it, and it did fell terribly. And I was like, oh well, it was that was a good shot at it, and they had actually been someone that had saw the GoFundMe, and they were like, this project looks amazing. Like this literally is us. Like one of them is definitely a metalhead. And definitely into the whole punk black scene, and then there's another one that's very goth and art. So Pep really just kind of appealed to each of them in a way that they were like, this is someone I wish I would have grew up. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
and read the comics or saw a TV show. There was like, I would have rocked the hell out of Pep's story and her whole aesthetic. And they were like, we think this should be done, and we think you should continue to write this, and it may be slow to burn at first, but the people that are like Pep will see it and they will appreciate it. So we all got together and just decided that it was a project that needed to be pushed, and we needed to focus on, and we needed to make happen.
Well, that's a beautiful sentiment. First of all, I just love that like Black women are just like taking charge and like helping, elevate your project. That makes me smile, honestly. It really does. And it's like to understand like you guys connected with a soul mission. Like it just aligned so perfectly. Like you all agree that we need to see more of us,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's on the pages, on the screen. Like we just need to be there. If nobody else is going to produce it, y'all are going to do it. And I mean, I can't tell you, like this is awesome. The story is awesome. It looks great. From the quality of the print to the story itself is like after the end of the book, it's like okay, what's happening? What's happening next? Like what is gonna happen?
Yeah.
What you're I'm just so drawn into and invested in Pepper's journey, as they're trying to figure out everything that's, going on with uh who the witch hunter organization. And then you just recently announced that volume 3, you're currently working on volume 3.
Mm.
And like one, how do you keep going? Because it feels like these releases have been like pretty close together. Like what's bringing your inspiration? What is your muse as you are producing the series?
The community is one. Um, Again, people like you that getting your reaction is what's pushing it, because and again, I hate to talk about this because I feel like I'm like somebody that watches this is like, hey, he's taking a stab at us, but we're not. What we're saying is we haven't done any GoFundmes, we haven't done any platform based, uh, what am I trying to say here, to get money, right? Like we're not like, hey, we got a GoFundMe going, and if you put money into it, then we can do like that was something that we had all agreed on from the beginning. Was like, it doesn't matter if people give us money for this comic or not, we're gonna make it,
Mm.
even if that means us coming together every week and being like, hey, how much you got, and being like, how much you got, like, all right, well, let's get these pages done. We were willing to do it, and till this day, that's what we're still doing. Like this is not like some company that has investors or anything like that. These are just common people that truly believe in a thing and that are like, people need to see this. And when they get an idea to see how large this story is and how big this is for the community, then everything else that we're hoping for will come to us. But it doesn't really matter right now. So in terms of how quickly the comics are coming out, yeah, we're just keep banging them out. We work hard, we have 9 to 5 jobs just like everybody else, and we just take that money out of those hard-earned jobs and we just invested in it, and we're just going to keep going, because the story has the capacity to, I would say, go for about a good 7 or 8 years before it really started becoming like mundane or repetitive.
Mm.
So, with that being said, I can write and just keep writing. The other cool thing about the story is that there's other characters who have their own stories, to talk about, and their own stories that veer off from Peps. So those two can become their own comic books and should be, in my personal opinion. So yeah, when it comes to them, after 3 comes out, 4's coming out. After 4's coming out, 5's coming out. So until pretty much everybody on the team loses all of their jobs at the same time, which we all hope never happens, there's just going to be comics coming out over and over again, rolling
Wow.
back.
That one, I have so much respect for you because that shows how much you love your art. Because not everybody, because sometimes some people get a little discouraged starting out because, they may not have the funds to do it. And there's always this pattern of, let me get a Kickstarter, let me get a GoFundMe. But there's only so many GoFundMe and Kickstarters people can support.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Unfortunately, we have seen people that have taken advantage of the GoFundMe and Kickstarter, and then still nothing comes out, and then it leaves like this area of distrust,
Mm-hmm.
which is like very unfortunate. But to see that you all have pulled together as a unit and put in your own money to really bring this product to the forefront and to the masses, like applause, honestly, because that's not easy to do. And I think like a lot of people are a little bit hesitant because they also don't know how people will receive their work either.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It could go either way, and people are just, you know what I mean. But I would just say, just if you have the funds and the ability to do it, just go ahead and put it out there and just see how people feel about it. You know what I mean? Because the one thing about our community, it is very Apollo theater. They
Mm.
will tell you if it's fire or not. Like it's no sugarcoating, it's no like blind support. You know what I mean? It's very like, if it's awesome, they will rock with you. If not, go back to the drawing board and do that in the third. But
It's
outside, you know what I
oh,
mean? But I was sorry. But like outside of like, my little, pep talk, what advice do you have, for an up and coming writer or artist that's, wants to be in the comic book industry?
get a team would be number one. Don't try to do it on your own. If
Mm.
you try to do it on your own, it could be extremely overwhelming. Um, I will say this too, just to piggyback off of what you just said. One of the other reasons we didn't want to do a Kickstarter is because we didn't want to create a comic that made the audience feel like if we did not get the money for it, it was the end of it.
Mm.
And that was one of the main reasons. Because trust me, who doesn't want money to know that our next comic is coming out, right? Like to know that those 200 or 300 issues are already bought and paid for. Like that's an amazing feat to do, right? But we just didn't want people to say, well, I'm not going to invest time into learning a character or buying merch for a character who, if their next Kickstarter doesn't make it, the that's the end of it, right? Why would they keep making that comic if they couldn't even get enough funds to kickstart the second issue? So our thing was, and excuse my French, fuck you. I don't need your money. I'm making this comic. Like you can be a part of it if you like and you can enjoy it a lot, but you are not going to determine if this goes as far as it needs to go or not. We will determine it. You know what I mean? And I think when we had that standpoint, we were like, yeah, this Pep's journey has absolutely nothing to do with anybody but us, right? I'm not putting it in anybody else's hands but our own. And so that was kind of like the moment where we're like, yeah, we're not doing it because we don't want our fans to think, well, when they come out, if it doesn't work. Like another thing we did was like we had 2 other comic books that were supposed to be released. One was called Patch, which was more so for the Spanish community, and then we had another one which was called the Adventures of, I think it was the Misadventures of C.J. Pumpkins, which was supposed to be about like a group of blurs and how they travel around to these different books searching for their favorite children's book author.
Oh.
And yeah, and they were really cool. You know, they were really they were awesome. I'm not even gonna lie. Like the storylines, the basis, everything. Of course, it was anime inspired, but definitely also showing love for fantasy. So it was like that perfect merge again. But you know, within I think starting the second issue of Pepper, we were like, scratch them. We're just gonna invest in Pep.
Hmm.
We're just gonna put all of our money into Pep because we just believe in her and we believe what she could do. So but to answer that question that you just asked, you what was the question?
I was, what advice would you give for
Oh,
up and coming
yeah,
artists in comic book?
don't do it on your own.
Mm-hmm.
Do it with a team. Don't be afraid to get advice from professionals. And what I mean by professionals is hiring a professional editor. I know sometimes new writers are like, I don't need that. That's a waste of money. No, it's not.
Mm.
It is. Even somebody like me that has been written for 20 plus years, in a professional setting, I have an editor, right? So aside from, you know, my female base and my binary base that looks at my work and goes, no, don't say that.
Hmm. Yeah.
Don't do that. No, Pep wouldn't do that.
Mm.
I also have a editor who looks at my work and goes, yeah, that just didn't make any sense, or why would you
Mm.
put that in there, or that's just no, don't ever do that again. So please, like, have your work looked at so that people are getting the best product that they possibly can. And number three would just be like, do it, and do it. When you do it, don't do it expecting anything back, because the minute you expect something back from it, when you don't get that return, it's going to be devastating to you.
Mm.
Because believe it or not, you know, you may have a IP and you may release it, and everybody might think it's the craziest and corniest thing that ever created, and then 2 years later, somebody picks that up and reads it, and the next thing you know, it's the greatest thing in the world. You know, like even though Pep is making a very is doing really well, right? Like we feel like social media is backing it up. We feel like the communities are backing it up. We all know it could be doing a lot better, right? And the only thing that's stopping that is it, you know, being seen by more people. But we also know too that having Willow Smith do a post with holding the comic up would automatically do that. You know what I mean? Like it's so don't if it doesn't start hitting the first year and you don't see people like these major powerful influencers holding your work and talking about how great it is, don't worry about it. Just means they haven't seen it yet or they're just missing out. Still put it out and still keep pushing and believing in that idea until people take notice.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that too because Dochi's anxiety song,
Mm.
she wrote that 4 years ago. And
Mm-hmm.
now it started to like it blew up on TikTok, and now it's like become one of like her big hits along with her mixtape.
Mm.
So art is something that's not immediately you're not always going to see the immediate payoff, but as
100%.
long as you are proud of your work and you know that you put your heart and soul into it, then it's worth it. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? And feedback is important too, like that's you know what I mean because like I even as like a teacher I also have like another editor that helps me because I have a journalism program, so it's not just me looking over everything. I have a backup for my backup.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And just to make sure like what you put out there makes sense, that it doesn't offend people, and if you really want that representation out there, then you would need other people's eyes that are also within the community to say, you know, yay or nay to this, so that because we've seen it with other marketing campaigns, with clothing brands and TV shows, and like y'all didn't catch this. This is a major. This
Yes.
he had nobody else in the room. Nobody else said nothing. Y'all just surrounded by yes men.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know what I mean? So it's always good to like surround yourself with people who are aligned with your mission,
Mm-hmm.
who understands the role and motivations of a character in the story, and that actually like knows the community uh that your character is in. So it's authentic. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? So like it seems like you have all of the ingredients to really make this product not just as a comic book, but I can see this being a series, whether it's animated or live action. Have you thought about, like, if it ever becomes a series or a movie, who would you cast? Have you thought about that yet?
Oh man, I don't even know if I can answer this correctly. Um, yes, there are three actresses that we have pegged for it. There is a feature that is swimming around. So that's the feature is swimming around right now. But what you guys are really reading right now is the TV series. Like you guys are reading the series. Um, so if you know as you're that's initially why some of the comics that we were putting out, because I know somebody said they were like, comic books are 22 pages. Why is your comic 36? And I was like, because it's a TV episode. You don't get it's an episode. Like, what do you want from me? It's a 30-minute pilot. So yeah, so you're literally are reading you're reading the series. So being as though the first season would have to deal with Pepper, finding the witch that killed her mother, which is kind of pretty much, you know, um, her immediate goal. That would be the first season, and then the second season would take you on to something else that takes her them into a different, a different a different how can I put different goal. So, but yeah, you're reading it. So, yeah, the first season you're reading it, just to put it in layman's terms. Yeah.
Awesome. Like, I can't wait. I like as soon as it's become a series, I'm watching it and I'm sharing it with my friends. We're getting popcorn, we're getting ice cream, eating junk food, and enjoying this because it's like it's that good. And I like, again, kudos to you and your team for really putting this out there. As we close out, I'm curious,
Mm.
if you were a hunter, which fable would you like to have?
Oh man, that is the best question you probably will ever have asked me in the history of me writing this. Um, I'm gonna have to go with, and I'm trying to say this because I want to give you so much information, you in particular, because uh, there was like a kind of love that you had for Pep from the Door. But I'll just have to give you tidbits later on and stuff. Um, all right, I'm gonna have to go with. Hmm, all right, don't give away too much information. Okay, I'm trying to think of a way not to give away stuff that I shouldn't. Okay, I'm gonna say Peter Pan. That's what I'm gonna
Okay,
do. Yeah.
why Peter Pan? Was
Well, so like Pedro's ability in the actual book is like you live forever, you can't die, and you can fly. Um, but I will, like, I feel like I'm gonna say too much, but I will let you know this: our fables work like anime powers to a certain degree, so there are levels to them.
mm,
So even though Pan's base ability just gives him this base ability of being able to fly and being able to stay young forever, which were some of the attributes of Peter Pan, there are other things, other levels, and other things that Fables can do that they have not um, figured out yet. And that was one of the main reasons why we. And I don't know if people realize that or not, but we started you at base level Pep for a reason. We started you there because that way you can slowly see the journey of them become stronger and stronger and stronger. But not only just them, but the people that they are around in the witch hunters organization. So as you continue to read, you're going to see and grow with them. We didn't just want you to start off with this overpowered character and then try to find ways to explain a backstory. Like you are at their lowest point. They don't have a fable. They don't even know if they'll ever get one. You know, pretty much they're hated by all the people around them. Like you are at base level. So we wanted you to enjoy this journey along with them. But it would be Peter Pan. And for reasons that I cannot tell you yet.
okay, that's fair. And I'm excited to see like what new powers each character would, you know, unlock. I am seeing hints of a character that I'm, I guess, going to be in volume 3, because I pay attention to the merch. You also
Okay.
support by buying the merch on the website. I'm seeing Red Riding Hood.
Little Red. Yep.
Little
Little
Red. So I'm like, I'm curious to be like what her powers would be, and I'm hoping, fingers crossed, it has something to do with the wolf.
Red.
Because I'm like excited. I saw the shirt and I saw and like there's hints. I'm not gonna give too much away because I do want you guys to get
Mm,
the comic book because it has been a joy to read.
thank
And
you.
also, whoever said like you can only do 26 pages, like first of all, who are you to tell me how much I can write in my book?
And we're like, we're giving you more. Like we're looking at the market, and we're like, okay, so people are charging $15 for 22 pages of comic, and this is on an indie comic market, right? Like field. We said let's do 36 pages and $10, right? So again, twice as many pages, still less money. And we still were getting backlash. So it was like, all right, next comic, we did 22 pages, $10. Still got backlash. So it was just like, all right, well, we'll just do what we want to do because there's no making you guys happy. So, you know,
Right.
but then again, if, you know, somebody could put out a, you know, an exclusive 15-page One Piece comic for $50 and people would buy it. I mean, I don't make the rules, you know. I'm,
Right. I would just say write as many pages as you want.
thank you.
It's all going to be great. And like I said, I can't wait for when will Volume 3 be out? When can we
Well,
expect the release?
so our plan is to do 3 a year. So the first was released in October of last year. So we're trying to beat October of this year, so that way we can have our official 3 out. And also, that was one of the reasons why I know a lot of people were like, "We've never seen you at conventions, and are you people real?" And we're like, "Yes, we are," but it doesn't make sense for us to go to a convention with one comic book or
Mm,
two comic books. We want to go and sit down and have you come to our table and go, oh my God, there's 3 comics, you know, that altogether that's roughly around 100 pages worth of material, right? Which is great artwork and gives you enough basis to really dive into the world and dive into the character and the story. So we just decided, you know, we should take that money that we're going to use to travel to these different conventions and just invest it back into the comic so that we could keep making more and more. So again, when we do make that visit to the convention, there's 3 comics there, and we're like, oh, and there's 3 more next year, right? So you already know, oh, okay, I'm not just buying 3 comics and then I'll never hear from these people again. I'm buying these 3, and while I'm buying these 3, they're already telling me, oh, the 4th one's coming in 3 months, you know, and then the 5th one's coming in 3 months after that, and 6, you know. So that's the plan. We want to be around a blurred community. Trust me, we would probably have tripled ourselves as well as the notoriety of Pep by now if we had attended, and that was a decision that I made, and I still think it's a good one. But we do want to be there. I had a chance to see you guys, with Room Full of Blurs, and I was just like, it hurt me. It really did. It hurt me deep down in my soul to not be there and have merch there for you guys, and which is why we always try to send you guys stuff, and because of the love you give us. Matter of fact, we haven't sent you anything sweet yet. All right, I just noticed. I just remembered that you didn't get anything extra yet, but we'll take care of that. But
okay.
that's one of the things. That's the reason why we do it, because we're like, look, we know we're not there to shake your hands and kiss you guys and tell you how much we love you, because you're the ones that are making videos, and your audience, your audience, are the ones that are going, wow, if Flo likes that, let me check it out, and then they're checking it out. So that's why we go in our pockets when we're like, sending you guys as much stuff as we can just to show you love, because we can't do it in person.
Right. And I appreciate the love so much. Um, because like I say, as soon as you sent me this, I fell in love with the character immediately. I can't wait to see volume 3. And of course we would love to have you like whether it's BlurCon, you know what I mean? Because I'm pretty sure you're gonna create a line at your booth for sure. And I understand like you want to build your library and so that people could walk away, do a deal and get like all 3 at once because
Exactly.
it leaves you at the edge of your seat for you like to want more. So you would definitely want to get all 3 simultaneously, like for sure. and see how you guys glowed from that conversation. Where can people find you?
So people can find us at nextstepcomics.com. That website will be updated. It's good, but we just want to show more about the company, more about the people that are involved. So you guys don't think we're all AI. Um, I said people just because people don't want to be on your screen does not mean they don't exist, guys. Some people just like to be quiet in their corners in their homes and still put out dope stuff, right? But yeah, so Next Up Comics, which is typically on any platform, whether it's YouTube, um, Instagram, Facebook, Next Step Comics, we got all of them, right? So Twitter, you name it, or X, Lemonade, whatever you got, Next Step Comics belongs to us. So you can find us there. And of course, for New York City's favorite punkster, Pepper Piper Monster Hunter is pretty much Pepper Piper Monster Hunter on all social media outlets, as well as pepperpiper.com or pepperpipermonsterhunter.com. Either way, you'll run into Pep.
All right. Thank you so much for being on my show. I really appreciate it, and I wish you all the success. I'm gonna catch you guys next time. Bye.